Hello and welcome to the Now Spinning Magazine podcast with me, Phil Aston. And on this episode, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome back Amanda Lehmann, solo artist, brilliant guitarist, vocalist, also a member of Steve Hackett's band as a special guest, and in recent times now as a solo artist. But what I'm trying to say there for those of you watching is that when I last spoke to you, Amanda, which was about 2 years ago, we talked about Innocence and Illusion, which is a stunning album that covered so many different textures, light and shade, tremendous epic prog, but also delicate little numbers as well. And I remember one of the questions I asked at the end of that interview was, are you going to go out on tour and do concerts? And you went, I don't think I am. And and since then you have.
Yes.
Just you and a guitar.
That's right.
So how did you approach that? Because I can think about why you probably said, I don't know if I can do this. I'll need a huge band. Some of these tracks are just almost orchestral. Some of these tracks are almost orchestral. And you must have had to have totally strip them back and rearrange them for this to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why, in the first place, I thought, no, I haven't got the time or the money to put a band together, and it needs a band. And yeah, so much as I really love gigging, and I was thinking, I wanted to do it to tour the album. It was just not really, I just didn't think it was doable. And it was a funny old thing because it was Trading Boundaries, where I've played as special guest with Steve and co. It was there, and Michael, who runs it, said to me, would you like to do a solo set of your music for us to sort of like kick off the Steve Hackett weekend? And I was like, I have to think about it. I don't like to just say no out of hand. I thought, well, I don't know. Can I think about it? And so I thought about it, and I thought, I don't know. I suppose I could do Memory Lane and Only Have It When It Rains. They might work. And the more I thought about it, the more I started to think, if I could do that one. And of course, I started reconstructing them in my mind. And hang on, I'm just going to turn my email off. Otherwise, it's going to beep all the way through. There we go. Got rid of that. And so the more I sort of thought about them, I started to reconstruct them. And it's been a really interesting process because certainly things like Tinkerbell, I mean, obviously the verse, there's the bits where I sing work nicely with just an acoustic guitar. Yeah. However, I thought, well, how on earth am I going to do the instrumental? And I thought, well, to a large extent, I kind of wrote that on the guitar. So if I just pare it back down to where it was, but just add in sort of some of the melodies that got put in later when Nick and I worked on it, I thought, well, I think that, so that's what I did. So I sing some of the melodies, I come in and out with some of the melodies and just pick the basic kind of little waltzy sort of tune and build it up. And what I found that works the best with doing this just solo is peaks and troughs. So you texture it, so you pull it right back to really, really tiny, and then build and come out to sort of quite loud, and that kind of gives it. Otherwise, you're just sort of like playing songs. It could become very boring after an hour of that. You got to make it. You got to hold people.
Of course. Yeah.
I've also bought a new guitar as well, a Fender Acoustasonic, and that's a lovely thing because that is more flexible, so you can get more variety of sound with it, and like a nice little chorus and delay. And so I've sort of made the sound a little bit more varied as well, so that the whole thing, it works, and it's been a real challenge. I've had to really sort of actually replace some bits of songs and then do a medley of some of them, and it's been very creative.
Because I mean, when you a lot of these songs, were they written on guitar? Because I know you're classically trained as began on piano, yeah. And I remember you saying that because it's a bit like my wife's classically trained, play the piano, and she plays violin, and she finds it easier to write on a violin. Well, on the piano, she finds it because of all these so many bars, so many this. she has all this, there's always like imaginary walls and barriers and rules she has to follow.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I remember that very much with the piano. It took me ages, took me years to actually be able to use it as a composing instrument. I could not break out of that classical training. Really, really interesting that she found the same thing.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm kind of traditionally compose music on the guitar, but I have certainly, since getting into synthesizers, I've got in, which, you know, I've done for a long time now. I've written a lot of my material on the keyboard, as well as the guitar, and some, like, I don't know, Forever Days, for instance, where I wrote some of it on guitar and some of it on keyboard. That was sort of both. And that was quite interesting with the live work, because if you take like a song like We Are One, which I wrote for the Harmony for Elephants album and is also on Innocence and Illusion, that one I wrote entirely on the piano, and it's mostly sort of piano and keyboard with a little bit of sort of like, you know, with lead guitar and some ebow, but the guitar is very much an effect. It's not like the lead part. So I haven't had that one in my set until recently, because I thought, well, that won't work because it's piano. And I thought about it. I thought quite recently, just a few months back, I thought, let's have a go. And that one weirdly works really well if you just transfer it onto the guitar, and that works a treat. So it's quite interesting how even with the ones that I created on the piano, I mean, Childhood Delusions is another one that's very piano, but again, you can make that work in a different way with just a guitar. So it's amazing, really, what you can do on different instruments and just make the same song work if you give it a different treatment.
Yeah, the other thing, I guess, going out as a solo artist is that when you're in a band situation, there are gaps for you to kind of be amongst other things. What I'm trying to say is there's nowhere to hide. So you can't take a step back while the bass and the drums and the other guitarist keeps everything traveling forwards while you know, get your breath or whatever. You are everything. You are creating the whole lot.
Yeah.
I mean, so it must have been quite a different approach to performing in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. I mean, I did used to do a lot of solo gigs sort of back in the day. And they were a bit different because I used to create backing tracks that I used to play too. So you're still playing to a band.
Yeah. Yes. I see.
Even though there's nobody there, and you have to, obviously, if you've got a backing track, you have to adhere to. You can't sort of get creative. But I suppose I've done that, you know, over the years. So I'm not totally unused to playing solo. However, when you're just there with just you and a guitar and there's nothing else, it's quite a big ask, and it's quite high pressure, and it is nerve-wracking. I have to say, before I go on, sometimes I think, am I doing this? It's like I must be mad. And then I go out and I start and I think, no, I know why I'm doing it, because I just love playing, and I love playing with the audience there and interacting with the audience. And yeah, there's nowhere to hide. If you make an error, everybody knows who did it.
Yeah, it's true.
And you can't, you've got to, you have to sort of talk between numbers, and that's up to you. But again, it's a totally different sort of treatment. I used to be quite nervous of speaking between numbers in the band. Well, not obviously Steve's band, I don't, but when I had my own band, it always felt a bit kind of awkward. Whereas this, again, it's a different approach. So I kind of, it's much more intimate. So I kind of have a conversation with people about the songs, or about, how do they feel? And it's really nice, because you feel that you're really connecting with people. And as you know, my songs are quite they're quite introspective, and they're quite, I like to communicate ideas and emotions with them. So there's plenty to talk about, and it becomes a very different sort of thing altogether. But it's a lot of, it's full on.
I mean, one of your songs, which is my favourite and has been when I first heard the album, and you've just mentioned that it's one of the ones that's in your acoustic set, is Memory Lane.
Yeah.
Because of the subject matter, because I lost my mum to dementia, and that song really kind of resonated with me.
Yeah.
And saying about how we connect to the audience now, thinking I've been lucky enough to talk to Steve Hackett a couple of times, and I mentioned to him that how the audience is different to when in the 70s, when he was obviously in his late 20s and the audience were roughly the same age, that your vision of what you talked about was very different, because the audience and yourself, everything was, you just saw decades ahead of you. But now as a performer, your audience is all ages, and they've been through a lot of experience in life, and probably experience loss, where in the 70s you didn't really know, your grandma might have died, but everything seemed okay. Whereas now, of course, it's different. So when you do a song like that, you must, because it must be very emotional to you because it's your mom, but for the audience themselves, because you're just you and the guitar, do you feel it takes on an even bigger a power in it, almost in some ways? The song, is it even more powerful when it's stripped back to just your voice and the guitar?
Yes, it is, definitely. It's sometimes it's very powerful. Because it's much more intimate. It's like I'm just speaking to people. It's like I'm having a conversation and I'm saying, this is my experience, this is what it felt like and how it went, and it was really painful and really difficult. And I know, because I can feel, even when I can't see people, I can feel the energy coming back. And I know there are, people out there that are feeling the same thing. And it's quite an emotional thing to do. And it feels very special as well. It's very healing. And often people come and talk to me about it afterwards, but they're not saying, why did you play that miserable song? That really upset me, made me feel really unhappy. It's because that sort of doesn't seem to be how it works, fortunately. It seems to be like a shared experience, a trouble shared. And it really, I feel it's a very healing process, that it helps people. It makes people feel less alone with their grief and their troubles and their memories. And so I think it really does work for everybody. It's a very special thing to do. And I'm, very glad to be sort of actually performing that song.
No, it's a beautiful song, and I do think, because I do a video series called Music for Mental Health, I think that music is like a healing thing. I mean, however you feel, whatever you put on in the room that you're sitting in, it changes the atmosphere of that room, doesn't it? It's almost like taking your vitamins. And I did say to Steve that when he's looking out at the audience, so Foxtrot at 50, which you play beautifully on, as the whole band is just superb, but you can see all these people of a certain age and their eyes are all watery because they're hearing music through the decades, but they're hearing it now and they're sharing it with these people going through life with them. And I think that's especially when you turn the news on and it's quite dark, that music is even more important in the age of streaming and how hard it is for musicians to earn a living. It's more important to us now as humans. It's the perfect art form. I mean, because you're part of that, you're on stage with Steve and you're playing these songs from his back catalogue, and you're seeing, can you feel that as well coming from the audience, the kind of how it's probably more important to them now than it was then?
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you say it's more important to them now maybe than it was then. I think that's true. I think it transports people. You can see people are just transported in the now, but back then, but in the context of now. So it's not like you just totally go back in time, but you're feeling all that stuff. I mean, we're all the same people we ever were. We don't just suddenly become older and start being different. When you're young, it's almost like you'll think you'll be different when you're older, but you're hopefully a bit wiser. But but we're still the same, and we still resonate with that music. And certainly when I play with Steve, you can really feel it, and you can see people with their eyes closed, or people just like, they're just soaking up like a sunny day, and it's lovely. It's very, very powerful. Yeah.
You said a moment ago that sometimes it's nerve-wracking going out with just you and the guitar. There's nowhere to hide. But when you go out on stage, like on that Foxtrot 50 DVD, that massive crowd and audience, I mean, is that a different type of nerves? Or do you feel,
Yeah. It's all nerve-wracking. I think, yeah, that's a different sort of nerves. Definitely. It's not quite such a kind of a heavy kind of, okay, this is, but it's kind of because you're in that band with those world-class musicians, you've got to be up to scratch. And I think that also when I perform with Steve and the band these days, or up to recently, it's because I'm not doing it full time. That's quite tricky because I come on sort of cold. So they've been probably already touring it, and I just sort of turn up and fit in, which is great. And but the thing is that you're never actually ready for a gig, no matter how rehearsed you are. It always takes sort of 2 or 3 gigs to really sort of knock out all the sort of the sharp edges and actually, you know, work out where your weak points are and where you sort of might get distracted or muddled up. And then you kind of like get into the swing of it, and then you're away then. And so of course when I've been doing like not many shows, that you don't get to that bit because you just get there and then that's it, you go home. So I know I did a couple of years ago, I did the whole of a European tour. And again, so that was really nice because I got rid of those. And that means I'm less kind of nervous because I got rid of all those sort of tripping up bits. And again, in October, I'm going to be joining them and for all of the shows. So all of the UK shows. And so hopefully, yes, after sort of like maybe show 2 or 3, I'll start to kind of feel a little bit less nervous before going on because I'll be just more in the flow.
will you, on the October tour, will you be on stage with them throughout the gig, or will there be times when you kind of weave in and out and you do come on and do a couple of numbers, or and you're not on for a couple of numbers?
Well, I won't be on for every single number. No, because like I say, even though it's the whole tour, it's still a kind of a one-off, and obviously they'll be doing other tours that I won't be there. So,
because a question I just wanted to ask about that, because again, it's the dynamic of a live gig that as you say, you know, the band are rehearsed, and you coming on quite cold and you get into it. Obviously, when it is a concert, the audience are going along on a journey with the musicians on the stage, and they're part of the experience. So when you actually do your stuff, and you know your guitar playing and vocals is just absolutely sublime, but if you then come away from the stage and for a bit, how do you keep that going so that when you come back on, you know, the audience or the band have moved on, and are you in the wings keeping the atmosphere going, or you don't go off and have a cup of tea or something?
Well, yeah, no, I don't relax that much. It's not a good idea. No, I think it depends on the venue, because sometimes, excuse me, sometimes you can wait in the wings, but other times it's not really that kind of place. It really just varies from venue to venue. But generally, I don't really like to disappear too far away because of exactly you lose that thread
thing. Yeah, the zone.
Going to keep in touch with it and then come back on. So yeah, I generally don't go too far away, so I can still hear it all and be in the moment with it. Yeah.
I want to just touch on Steve Hackett's "The Circus and the Night Whale" album.
Oh, yes,
because that's one of my favorite albums by Steve, and you sing all over that.
Yeah.
But my favorite section is "Ghost Moon" and "Living Love." Yeah. Your vocals at the start of that are ethereal, angelic. They just was that you? Was that Steve saying, I know what I want, Amanda. I want something like, or did you just, how did that come about?
Yes, I love doing that. I'm glad you like that. I'm glad that comes across.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I know Steve was really happy with it. And that came from Steve because, as he's described before, he had a sort of he was very poorly a long time ago, and I won't go into that because that's his story, which he tells. But he had this music sort of came to him as he was kind of half sort of recovering in a sort of a dream, and he remembered this line of music, and it was decades ago, I think this happened, and it was like a kind of a healing music And he'd told me about this before. So then when he said he wanted to incorporate this into his album, when would I sing it? I was really pleased. I said, yeah, that would be an honor to sing that, because I know how special that melody is to him. So it was very important that I got the soul of that little melody just right. And I kind of understood, I think, what that was and what that needed to sound like. So I was just very, very pleased that the treatment I gave it was exactly what he wanted, and that people have responded really well to that little piece as well, to introduce that song. Yeah, very magical.
It is. It's beautiful. Because I mean, the whole album's very autobiographical for Steve, isn't it? So, as you worked on all the songs, were you kind of able to kind of feel the story that he was telling? Because it's a bit like some of your stuff. It's very cinematic. It could easily be taken out and created into little dramas,
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it's very, very pictorial, isn't it?
Yes.
You get like a tremendous sense of atmosphere with each one. And I was very aware of that when I was involved with the vocals on that. It you kind of can't really not be aware of it. But also I had sort of, heard conversations and sort of heard it at various stages as well. So I was quite aware of the process of it as well. So it was really enjoyable to be involved on that album.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I imagine it would be Steve's decision, but I hope that the gigs are always called whatever, Foxtrot or Lamb Lies Down plus Hackett songs. I would hope that one or two tracks from this album venture onto the stage. It would be
yes. They tend to. Each new album does definitely get a little bit of a show there.
Excellent. You've also done a few sessions as well, the Raging Project and Kurt Michaels and Michael Dunn. These are obviously all done, I imagine, online, with files being sent backwards and forwards, which is, when I talk to a lot of people now, that's how albums are put together. But is this also an exciting way for musicians to connect and be involved in lots of projects far more easily than it would have been in the past?
Definitely. It's a wonderful thing to be able to do, to actually be able to create music like that, because gosh, otherwise you have to find someone to rehearse, and also you have to pay for a studio and get everybody there on the same day, and then you're tense because you've time, and etc. I mean, okay, you don't get the sort of rapport that you get when you say there's two of you in a room and you're thrashing something out together. You can get a lot of kind of, you end up with your ideas sort of collide and intertwine, and you can end up with something that's even better than if one or other of you have thought of it. So you don't get that process. However, I think it still means that you're able to do things you really wouldn't have been able to do. I mean, a lot of the people that I've done music with, they're in America or Canada or wherever, France, all over the place. And there's no way those songs would ever have happened, or I wouldn't have been involved in those songs if we couldn't have done it like this. And it's great because you become friends with people as well, like as if you've met them. It's really weird that you haven't actually physically met them, because I feel I know these musicians well, and we've sort of emailed or spoken on the phone or whatever. And it's a really, really good way of doing it and makes so many things possible. Yeah.
Well, you're incredibly busy. You've got some festivals coming up as well. You do the solo gigs. You've got Steve's stuff as well. Have you got any plans to do a follow-up to Innocence and Illusion? Is it in the background? Oh, yes.
Definitely. I've got so much written for that. And I've started doing some recording on it as well. I think I've just been so busy with so much, and over the last however long it is since the last album, that I haven't sort of got as far ahead with it as I wanted to. I really wanted it to be out this year. So I'm going to have to sort of carve out some really big chunks of recording time to really move it along sort of next year and really sort of, because like I say, I've got a lot of it written already, and I'm just looking to get on with it.
Did the solo gigs, has that in any way influenced how you've written music for the new album? Has it made you think about? Yeah,
it has. It has, because I mean, I think it's all you progress creatively in so many different ways. Whatever you're doing, if it's music, it's going to make a difference. And I think that this has taught me even more about texture. I love texture anyway. I love just making things really, really quiet and tiny, and then you can come out bold. And I think there's some bands that do that. They might even have the same chord sequence running all the way through, but it still sounds interesting because they do all these different things with it. I'm a bit of a chord junkie. I do like, lots of different chords, but that's me. Yeah. But yes, I think this has taught me even more that you really can use the texture, the volume, the pace of the thing, the whole feel of it. You can really put it back, maybe even more at times. And like I did on We Are One, I mean, I think that's a song that really I did make to go into very quiet passages. So that's something I would definitely use. And just, I guess it's made me better at the guitar as well, because I've been more the acoustic style rather than always playing the electric. So I've had to really sort of forge ahead with that and get more techniques on that. So that's all made differences.
Because obviously with electric guitar, and not to say it's forgiving, but obviously you've got the sustain, you've got the electrics behind it, and you've got control of a lot of dynamics. But with an acoustic guitar, the notes decay very quickly, and it's just bare, just on its own, isn't it? So there's nowhere to hide. I was lucky to talk to Steve Howe about it, and he said, yes, that's exactly right. He said there's nowhere to go. But so when your approach to songwriting has probably changed in that way, because obviously, as you just said, each song you do now, you're thinking, I wonder if I could do this on my own. And then
Yes, there is a little bit of that, I must say, yes. But I'm also, I don't want to be restricted by that. And I've realized that I've managed to do quite a lot of these tracks that definitely wouldn't be obvious that you could do them. I know there are a couple that I don't think would work on their own, like Forever Days or Who Are the Heroes. I really don't think those would work. So I haven't vaguely tried them and thought, no, it's not. But and there will still be, but it's like The Watcher. I mean, that works.
Oh yeah, it's a great track.
So, because it needs all that the drums and the bass and the big keys and all the harmonies and the lead guitar all over it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah,
it really surprises me that one works. But if you put your heart and soul in it, and you really do, obviously you've got to do all the construction, but you actually, when you perform that song, you give it your all, then it comes across.
So as the acoustasonic guitars, is that made by Fender? Is that one?
Yeah.
Is that change? Is that change? Because looking at it, looks like the neck is more like an electric guitar than an acoustic.
So, it is. Yeah, it's a lovely thing. It's a very odd thing. It's very incredibly light. And when I put it at home, my son picked it up and I said, that's like a toy. Well, yes, it is a bit, really.
That's what you want, though, isn't it? Because these things are heavy.
Well, exactly, and also they're very deep as well. I mean, an acoustic guitar, my Faith acoustic, it's a gorgeous guitar, but it is, you end up like, after a while your shoulder hurts, and all the creaks and things that one gets. And I thought, I don't know, I really would like something that's a little bit more light, a cross between. And I did try some out, but it's difficult to get one of those guitars that sounds good and doesn't get that, that kind of woolly, middly kind of
I know what you mean.
Muted sound. But this is lovely. You plug that in. I got like a little amp that is beautiful with it as well, that just DI at gigs, and it's a lovely sound. It's even got that slight Fender sort of twang about it.
Yeah. It looks a lovely instrument. So what gigs have you got coming up in the near future before heading off with Steve in October?
Well, I got a bit of a break now, which is quite handy. And then I've got a couple of small sort of like private gigs. And then I've also got what I'm quite excited about is the Wokingham Festival on the August bank holiday, and I'll be opening the stage on the Monday. I'll be about 12:30. I'll be the first act on the main stage for that on the bank holiday Monday, and I think that's going to be a nice festival. I'm getting a really good sort of
vibe from that. Yeah.
So I think that, I'm looking forward to that one. And then sort of quite soon after that, of course, I'm off with Steve Co at the beginning of October. So
when do you start rehearsals for something like that? Because it's not simple music, is it? I mean, it's very different.
What, for Steve's?
Yeah, Steve stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm starting to look into it now. I've got some manuscript that Roger sent over to me to sort of like look at that because I got to work out the parts I'm going to do with the new songs. What am I going to do with the guitar? I need to work that out because obviously I've not played guitar on them. So that's challenge number one. Is to work out what I'm going to play that complements it and doesn't go over anything that it shouldn't, but is worth having there as well. And obviously I know sort of what I'm singing, but I need to re-rehearse that and then put it all together and just rehearse up the stuff, like Hierophant and the ones I've played before, and just make sure that I'm up to scratch on those because I haven't played them for a little while. And it is, as you say, it's very different. It's hugely different to the acoustic. It's, I'm kind of used to doing the solo shows now. So I mustn't just strut up the front like, hello, everybody. This is my show, isn't it?
But in a way that's good as well, because it's giving, so your confidence is growing. You're growing as a musician and a performer all the time. And the solo gigs have given you a different dynamic as well.
A different angle, yes. It's nice to sort of revisit those as well and do some solo stuff because it had been a long time. I suppose the last solo gig I'd done was probably 2002 or something. I don't know. Wow. It was a long time ago. 2004, probably, just before my son was born. It's a long time ago, so it was nice to get out there and do that again after all that time. Yes, it's going to be lovely to be back in a band as well, and with all that sound,
all that power and theatre. Yeah, it'll be
and people to interact with as well. Yeah. It's lovely, interacting with Steve and then Jonas, and everybody is just so interactive. It's brilliant. Yeah, they're just such a nice bunch of people as well as being incredibly talented.
Well, thank you very much, Amanda, for all of your time. If people want to find out more about you, they can go to amandalehmann.co.uk and Amanda Lehmann Music on Instagram, aren't you? And you're easy to find on Facebook. Yeah. So all your information is on there. And the album is still available, isn't it, on CD?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it is. Yes. You can find the links to that on my website. And yes, it's on streaming as well.
And did you think finally that you might do a vinyl version one day? Or
I'd love to. I really would like to do that. And I kind of think about it, sort of how will I sort of put that together in the sense of, would I do that with the next one or separately? But I think it really should be on vinyl. And I wanted to do it at the time. There's just too much of a gap that you have to leave to get them produced. It's months and months. So
yes, that's very true.
Too late to do it, but I'd like to.
Very true. Well, thanks very much, and take care, and good luck with the gigs, and look forward to hearing the new album in the future. So thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Lovely to see you again.
And you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
A huge thank you to Amanda Lehmann for joining me for this podcast. It's been wonderful to catch up with Amanda again. The album Innocence and Illusion is still available. It's absolutely wonderful album. It's progtastic. Everything you'd want from a progressive album is on it, but equally elements have just been purely delicate, but equally incredibly reflective songs. And Memory Lane, the song that she wrote about her mom when she had dementia, is so heartfelt. And for me personally, my mom went through the same thing. That song just resonates with me, not in a way that makes me feel sad or depressed. It's reflective, but it's uplifting. That there are other people out there feel the same. And I think that's where we are with music now. Whereas we go back to music on pure pop, and it was quite shallow, the field of depth, the depth of field, if you like, with how music was written, how it interacted with people. But now music just interacts and connects with people from every demographic. And I think that's what's so wonderful about people. Young kids are in shops buying vinyl records, they're on Spotify, discovering Kate Bush. And, the Kate Bush fans in that period, they might be in their 60s or early 70s or 50s, and everybody's connecting to the same art form. And that's why I feel it's so important to support artists by buying CD or the vinyl copy to bring yourself closer to the musician. And it's really interesting to talk to Amanda how she's adapted her music, which is huge at production values, and going out there with just her and a guitar. But I would highly recommend that album, Innocence and Illusion, but also Foxtrot at 50, when you see her on stage with Steve Hackett, really playing some stunning guitar solos, wonderful singing. And also on the Circus and the Night Whale, which I've reviewed and spoken to Steve Hackett about separately. Her singing on that is just sublime, especially on Ghost Moon and Living Love. It's just incredible. And the story behind that song is also amazing as well. So as Amanda says, she's working on a new album, and she's going out with Steve Hackett in October on tour, where they'll be visiting Lamb Lies Down, which will be really interesting, plus some tracks from Steve's new album. And as I said, she's working on a new album as well. If you want to know about her gigs and when the festival she's playing, then go to amandalehmann.co.uk or Amanda Lehmann Music on Instagram and on Facebook, and you can get all the latest information, contact details even, and you'll be able to buy her album directly from her website. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, to the Now Spinning Magazine podcast on Apple, Amazon, or Spotify, wherever you listen. We are there. We're also on Instagram, X, Threads, LinkedIn, TikTok. Again, wherever you are, so are we. Music is the healer and the doctor. So keep spinning those discs. Stay safe, and I shall see you all very, very soon.